The Empowerment Show aims to equip individuals with the necessary tools, knowledge, and confidence to make informed decisions and take control of their lives. It also focuses on ensuring access to essential resources and the opportunities.
All right, good evening, good evening. Now it's time to clock. Look at me, I'm talking about it's time to clock. It's time to rock. It's 5 o'clock. Hope you guys had a good weekend and a good time. Recently, we had the 4th of July, so I hope everybody went out and they enjoyed themselves. But honestly, to me, the 4th of July is not something that I truly celebrate because people that look like me, during that time, they were still in chains. So there was nothing for people that look like me to celebrate. So I really don't really get that much into the celebration of the freedom of a certain people, and my people weren't free. So anyway, brother, how was your weekend?
It was good, brother. Thank you very much. And how was yours?
Oh, it was pretty decent. My wife had a birthday this weekend, and
happy birthday!
Right on. We went up to Liberty State Park.
Oh,
Beautiful day with family, friends. It was really nice, really nice. Now, we always start this show off by trying to give some sort of gratitude or something to be grateful for. Well, today I actually want to give a prayer and hope other people want to follow through with it. I have a niece. Her name is Nikki, and she had a heat stroke. She's down in Florida, and she's in the ICU. So I'm just like to say a little prayer that everything turns out okay. All right.
Ashe, brother.
Ashe. All right, let's get the story going. So this weekend we had the Haitians. They were down in Brooklyn. Man, from my understanding, them Haitians wasn't taking it. ICE went down there and got it like a mob fight. They were fighting in the streets. It was crazy. Like I said, the Haitian people said no more. We're not taking. They should know better than to mess with Haitians. But
they most certainly should.
Yeah, Haitians are definitely fighters. When it comes to people that look like us, the Haitians are definitely fighters. What are they? They must be descendants of Moors or something, man, because they definitely fighters. I got a clip if you want to see about what took place.
Before we get into that, right? I just like to offer condolences to the families down in Kirk County, Texas. I think there are, at the last update, about 106 people have lost their lives in the tragedy down there with the rising floodwater that just inexplicably, I think 25 feet in a matter of hours. So I think 106 people have perished. So I just want to send my thoughts, prayers, and sincere condolences to the families down in Kirk County, Texas.
I'm going to run that clip. Again, condolences to all the people that are suffering. Like I said, I tell you about my niece, and it tells you about the people down in Texas. Well, there's people like us all over the world, man, that are suffering. We're suffering unnecessarily. Let me run this clip for you. Show you about the Alaki and how much they want to come down on us, and they want to take control. They want to take in charge, and this man really wants to put in this martial law. All right, I'm going to run this here for you, babe. Hold on. No, bro. Hell no. Look, see, grab him, smash him. So now we're not going for it. So this is just one of the little things that they had that took place over the weekend with the Haitians downtown in Brooklyn. This thing was jam-packed. If you went downtown Brooklyn, that place was jam-packed wall to wall. Maybe 5, 6, 7 blocks long, that it was just filled with people in the streets protesting. So what are they protesting against? ICE coming in, or? Because in Mexico, in California, they had in Oakland, what is it, not Oakland? Oakland, they got a park there called MacGyver. No, not MacGyver. MacArthur Park. So in MacArthur Park, they had the police that came there riding horses, and other police came in with armored vehicles. And they go through the streets of here, supposedly scaring people. They're using these terrorist type tactics to scare people. Now, here's my question. We talk about waste and fraud and abuse and all of this. How much money is going into this police force, this against the migrants? How much money is being wasted on that with the ICE and all of those people?
Well, according to this big, beautiful budget that was just signed, which is really a big, huge disaster to borrow a Trumpism, $46.5 billion has been allocated for ICE. So that means they're going to hire more ICE agents. That means more equipment. That means more deportation. That means more people being denied their rights. And as it relates to what happened in Brooklyn with the Haitian community, this is part of a much larger movement. This is a global thing that's going on. You know, around the world, there are a number of countries. Here in this country, fascism, Romania, fascism, Turkey, borderline fascism. So you have people like Viktor Orban, you know, these are fascist governments. And people are beginning to say, hell no, I'm not going to be subjected to this. And the Constitution, the way it reads, right? The idea is that people submit to be governed. You volunteer to pay your taxes. You volunteer to serve in the military, to protect this nation. You volunteer to allow the police to come into your home, to come into your community. But what happens when you say enough is enough? What happens when you're no longer going to be compliant? So Trump is trying to do things like a show of force. But you got to understand something. The same people that he's going to use to suppress the crowds are working class and poor people. If you're a rich person, you don't join the military. You don't become a cop. You go into banking, right? So he's using working class and poor people to suppress and deny the rights of other working class and poor people. I think it's going to backfire.
To me, like I tell you, we spoke about this last week, and as far as I'm concerned, what they're doing is they're punishing us and rewarding people who already have money, people who don't need money, like the Linda McMahon. She stands to gain what, $380 million if once, well, now that the bill went through. So they're spending millions of dollars. We gave up our freedoms for our safety. We talked about that before. That's why we got these so-called military police running around. All right, so we gave up our freedom so that we could have this safety. But now that we got this so-called safety, this safety is going to backfire on us. And like I said, he's going to lead us right into martial law, man.
Well, you know what? Our safety has always been an illusion, right? You know, people seem to feel comfortable if they see somebody in uniform, a police officer, a soldier. Well, let's say now, you know, I was a police officer. I did 20 years. Most of my career, I was at Newark Airport. So if there's a police officer, say in my case, me in the terminal, people feel safe and secure. But what is one police officer going to do if somebody really wants to do harm to others? If somebody wants to, say, plant a device, a bomb, or some kind of caustic agent, right, that will render people helpless. Yeah, there's a cop there, but what can they do? Nothing. It is all our security. It's an illusion. And, you know, I saw something today that now, after 20 plus years, now the TSA is saying that you don't have to take off your shoes to go through the airport anymore, to go through screening. You still can't drink your cup of coffee or
Can't
drink
drink
your
a
bottle
bottle
of
of water.
water,
Yeah.
but you don't have to take off your shoes anymore. What a major improvement.
So what is it going to do not being able to take off your shoes? You can still stick something in your shoes and slide through? Is that what it is?
Well, you know, they were saying that years ago they had this so-called shoe bomber that was supposed to be trying to light a device in his shoes. Now, here's the thing. These scanners at the airports look for metal. So let's be realistic. You're going through a metal detector anyway. Why do you need to take your shoes off? This is
Well,
just something that they made up on the fly.
well, if it's a plastic explosive, then it wouldn't you wouldn't detect
It
it.
wouldn't register anyway, right? And if it's a plastic explosive and you take your shoes off and put it through the scanner, it probably won't register there either.
Yeah.
Unless there's a high degree of nitrates, it's not going to register.
Hmm.
I mean, there was in the Bush administration, one of his cabinet members was a guy by the name of Michael Chertoff.
Hmm.
Michael Chertoff, when he left the Bush administration, he went to work for a company that produced the screening apparatus that they use at the airports. So of course, because he was part of the Bush administration, he had an in with the administration.
Mm-hmm.
Just about every airport was basically encouraged to get the screening apparatus, screening machines that his company was producing. So he made hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, well, I mean, our president today is not doing anything so different. He's not making hundreds of millions. He's making billions of dollars. This president here. What did we talk about last week? What was the amalgamation clause?
The emoluments clause.
The emoluments clause, where a president is not supposed to make X, Y, and Z money wise, but he's making hand over fist. He's going from one country. Look, if he's not bullying somebody to take money from them, he's just outright taking it from them.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And threatening everybody else.
Right.
Now, a lot of people voted for this man, and I feel bad that you have voters remorse. And honestly, I don't think that this is what people voted for. To tell you the truth, that this even with the ICE and the deportation, I don't think this is what people asked for. And they were talking about going to get and he said it during his campaign. We're going to go after the worst criminals. That's what he said. Mm-hmm. But he's going after everybody. I mean, now and then he got the way he says, well, he's going to start going after American citizens, and I don't doubt him and his word at that. I don't.
Well, he's already gone after American citizens. He will continue to. But when he said he was going after the worst of the worst, well, let's be realistic. If he really was targeting the worst of the worst, one of the first people that would have been deported would have been him with 34 felony convictions. He would have been the first one on the plane.
He's an immigrant.
Right. Well, not him. His mother was first generation from Ireland.
Well, that's what they're saying. Even though your parents may come from that country, and you may even been born here, but they come from another country, you're going too.
Well, if he's going to remove birthright citizenship, well then him, his wife, and his son Barron, all of them would be up for deportation. Mm-hmm. So we're not getting rid of the worst of the worst. What we're doing is we're reducing the number of black and brown people, yet paving the way for more people from Europe to come to this country, or from South Africa, i.e. the South African farmers that claim they are fleeing a genocide.
And then if they don't get enough of them, they're changing the laws, or at least trying to change the child's laws as to when they can work. I think they're going down to 7 years old. trying to. It's ridiculous, man.
Well, I know.
The kids, you know what they want to do with these kids. They want to put them in the fields to replace.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's why they changed those. I know there was some legislation in some states like Texas that would allow children, I think as young as 15, to work overnight during the summer months when they're not in school, which is ridiculous. Because nobody is going to take those jobs going out in the field.
You know who will take those jobs? I'll tell you who take those jobs. The poorly educated. Remember, the man said, I love the poorly educated. He said that for a reason. Mm-hmm. The ones that are, look, we're taking jobs even now that sometimes that we don't want, but because of our educational level, we can only go but so far. A guy graduates from high school, Americans, 15 years old or whatever. He's 18 years old. He's black, and he goes up. Maybe he'll end up being a security guard or working in a movie theater, but it's going to pay about the same as him working out in the field.
But, out in the field, right? I think some of these places, these field workers probably make between $5 and $10 an hour, and with zero benefits, right? So what does it benefit me to go out in the field, work for $5 or $10 an hour, no health care, no pension, no 401k? So a lot of Americans are not going to take those jobs. We haven't historically. We've always brought in cheap labor, whether it was the indentured service, the Europeans, then it was the Native Americans, and when they didn't work out, they brought in Africans.
Right.
And then even after or post-slavery, they brought in the Chinese to build the railroads. So they've always brought in cheap labor. But of course, as our job market, the American job market, it left this country, went overseas. It went to places like China, places like Vietnam, places like Japan. We allowed these things to happen in the interest of profits for corporations.
And
the then we turned around.
The American people also, they didn't want to spend the high prices. That was also a part
of it.
Right?
But you know what? The prices weren't that high comparatively. And you got to think, what's the quality of the stuff we're getting now?
From where?
Exactly. Years ago, I remember remember the Maytag man? He said, I'm the loneliest guy because Maytags don't break down. Right? You bought an appliance, that appliance you keep for 15, 20 years or more, and it would work. You get a washing machine, you might have to replace a belt or something. But for the most part, those appliances were built to last. Nowadays, what lasts more than 4 or 5 years?
Well, they're not built to last any longer than that. We know that, man, because they want to keep that money rotating around. But it's got to come to a head at some point to where we're going to have to get the break. We're going to have to become the people like the people in Burkina Faso. We're going to have to be the ones that tell the government and them, you guys got to stop this, man, because we're the ones that's being punished. Look. We talk about the appliances. We could look at healthcare. People may not even have healthcare in the future. We talk 10, 15 years down the road. We're actually taking steps backwards in this country. We were progressively moving forward, all right, and now we've stopped moving forward, and we actually started taking these steps backwards, and we're going backwards. And sooner or later, we're going to be back into a Jim Crow era. Or some sort of era like that. We'll give it a name, right? We'll be back in that state where you won't have any health insurance and I won't have any health insurance, and there won't be any such thing as a union. No protection for you. Education, if you don't have the money, you won't be able to go. So, and they'll keep those that are uneducated. They'll save those for that cheap labor that they're looking for the ones they want to get out in the field. And just like now, the people that they want with lower education, they stand at the door, security guards. I'm not saying that's a bad profession. You make your money, you do what you got to do. But I mean, in the hierarchy, that's not way up here. You don't have to be a rocket scientist in order to get those type of jobs. You dig what I'm saying? So they want to dummy us down so they can put us out there in the fields. They telling the kids, you don't got to go to college because college is not for everybody. That's the propaganda they're telling to the teenagers. So by the time these teenagers are ready to graduate from college, from high school, they don't want to go to college, and they got a good excuse because people are telling them, college is not for everybody. Go to trade school. Like that's a break. Like that's a break off, right?
Well, a couple of things as it relates to us telling the government, right? One of the problems is we've been telling the government for years. The government has not been listening. And if you think about it, that was part of the reason for January 6th, right? Trump had these people convinced that I'm listening to you. I care about you. I hear you. I hear you, when you talk about things like I can't afford to put food on the table. I hear you when you say that this country is a disaster. I hear you when you say that you don't feel empowered anymore.
Hmm.
Well, this is what we've been saying to our government for generations, but no one has been listening. And now we're at a point where you can forget Trump listening. Trump is not saying, let's have a dialogue. Trump is saying we need to put the Marines into the street. We need to put the National Guard into places like Los Angeles, even when the governor and the mayor have not requested them. So this is about a show of force, because this has been something that police departments have been preparing for a long time, and that's civil unrest.
Oh yeah.
Some of these police departments, I know New York City for sure, has a number of weapons that they can bring out, right, that are not lethal, but will disperse a crowd. They have something that looks like a dish that heats up the environment to such a point you feel your skin is going to peel off, right? So they have these sort of things in
like
store.
An napalm or something?
It's like a dish, right? But it creates ambient heat so much so if you're in contact with this dish, it'll feel like your skin is going to like peel off. It creates that much heat. Well, they have these things because they know that civil unrest is coming. They know that they would push the American people just too far. That's why you see the revolt with the Haitians. You got to think, when Trump was running for president, he went on to the debate stage, and he said that the Haitians were eating the cats and dogs.
Yeah.
Right? These people have been maligned, miscategorized for years, right? A lot of us don't understand, how did Haiti become so poor? All we focus on is the poverty and the destruction in the country. We never talk about what our government was complicit in, how France made Haiti pay reparations from the 19th century well into nearly the 21st century. They bankrupted that country.
Mm-hmm.
Just like what's happened in Burkina Faso. Captain Traore said, "Oh hell no, you're not going to bankrupt us anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to take all of our wealth into Europe and then sell it back to us at prices we can't afford."
But at least over there, you got a president that gives a damn about the people. Over here, this guy doesn't care about. He cares about those 83 billionaires that we have in the country, and those are the only people that's making out. Because everybody else is going to get. You may not see it right away. It may not be pushed right in your face right away, but as a couple of years go by, you'll see the effects of what took place about this bill and how it's going to affect so many people. Millions of people.
Well, look, this is no secret, right? Donald Trump said that for the average American, working class American, or poor American, that you're essentially going to have to be patient, right? Be patient. The economy will turn around. Yet he's not patient. He took a $400 million plane from Qatar, a country he said that supports terrorism. Then he wants the American taxpayers to pay to retrofit that plane. Why do you need another one, Donald? There are 2 Air Force Ones. Ain't nothing wrong with them.
Don't you know what he's going to do about the plane when he's done with the plane after his presidency? He wants the plane to be put into the library.
No, he doesn't. Who puts a perfectly working plane, into a library? That's going to be his.
But that's what the man said he wants to do. He does not want another flying in plane. He wants it to be put in his library.
But we know the man's a liar, right? We know this man does not have any sort of relationship with the truth. This man is the father of lies. And, when I was saying before about a global movement, people all around the world are rising up against their governments, right? Particularly those that are far right leaning, like our government, and like so many others around the world, right?
Yeah, people are tired of war, man. People are tired of all this killing and this hatred and basically it's not coming from the average layman. It's not coming from people like you or people like me. It's not coming from the average Joe Blow. It's coming from the guys up at the top. They're making all these decisions about how they want to go out. Let's go kill somebody. Let's go to war. We don't like this country because of X, Y, Z. So we're going to send millions of people over there to die.
And you know what? It's always been that way, right? Modern warfare, it's all about money, right? Because if you think about it, we went and bombed in Iran. Now that was only, a bombing mission, right? Damage, who knows the true assessment of how badly their nuclear capabilities were damaged. But for someplace like Iraq, we spent 20 years bombing Iraq back into the Stone Age. Well, of course, for the arms makers, this is a windfall. Constantly got to buy new bullets, new bombs. For people who, the companies that sell fuel, got to keep the planes flying, tanks rolling. This is a windfall for corporate America. Then, after the bombs stop dropping, the next thing is the World Bank and International Monetary Fund have to now make loans to these countries to rebuild what we bombed.
Mm-hmm.
So now these people are in debt for centuries.
Now here it is.
And what do?
Who do they send over there to rebuild it? Okay, that's usually our contractors.
Absolutely.
We send our equipment over there. We send
Absolutely.
our guys over there. And who pays for all of this? American taxpayers.
There is a book called The Diary of an Economic Hitman. And if you read that book, I can't remember the author's name right now, but if you read that book, he outlines in detail how, we follow that protocol, right? We go into a country that we know has been economically disadvantaged. And his job was to set up an electrical grid. So they were sent to places like Central America. He knew nothing about electrical power. Nothing. But he didn't need to. His job was to go over there, see what resources the country had, what areas were lucrative. And then he would say, okay, we can set up an electrical grid for you. It'll cost you about, and we're talking, this is in the 70s when he was doing it. So let's say, conservatively, it's going to cost you $50 million. No way this country could pay that back. However, it's okay if you give us this piece of land over here. Well, under that piece of land is oil, there's gold, there's something that they're aware of that makes this land extremely valuable. And they get that, but they still want you to pay those loans. They may call themselves restructuring the loans, but you're still going to pay them.
Isn't that what happened in Africa? I mean, a lot of those countries in Africa, they didn't have to go over there with the bombs and the bullets and the soldiers. They went over there with papers and contracts and so forth. And they stole a lot of land and didn't leave anything behind for anybody else. Well, at least they stole a lot of resources and so forth. And they didn't leave anything for anyone else. But didn't the Europeans do the same thing when they came to this country? And now aren't the Jews doing the same thing in Gaza? Is this not the same thing?
Well, that's what I meant about a global struggle, because there's really not much difference between what is happening or what has been happening to the Palestinians and what happened to people in apartheid South Africa and what happened here during Jim Crow and segregation. There's really no difference. The same people that are right now in Gaza are the same people that were the European colonial powers. And, Netanyahu was here on Monday. Yesterday he was here.
Yeah.
In fact, he said he wants to put Trump up for a Nobel Peace Prize.
Get out of here. Did he get money? He got money,
well,
right?
Of course he came for money. He came for money, of course, because he wants to continue his war. And in order to do that, you need funding. So, of course, he came over with a declaration to say, I want to put Trump up for a Nobel Peace Prize. See, if you blow smoke up Trump's ass, of course, what happens is...
he is, right? Most people know that.
He's going to do whatever you say. Right. So if they want a few $billions for their military in order to be able to continue this ongoing situation in Palestine, and also the situation in Iran. I do not think it's over, because let's be realistic. We don't know for sure if we have seriously degraded Iran's nuclear capabilities. So this is not over. This is not over.
Well, it doesn't seem like, I'm gonna tell you, bro. As long as I've been around this planet, man, both you and I, we both served, man. It just seems like people just want to kill each other, man. And really, when it all comes out in the wash, half the time it was for no real particular reason other than snatching up land or snatching up of the other guy's resources. I mean,
money and power.
Yeah, money and power.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, I'm getting tired of it. I really am, man. I'm tired of the hatred. I'm tired of the. I'm just tired. It's just like you say. It's a never ending story. These people getting power. Nobody goes after them. Did you see how they went after Obama because they thought he wanted to take their guns? See how they went after him? The way they went out and spent all this money on guns and stuff. Now this man is actually going to try to take away your health care. Because what is it, 17 million people? Where's the outcry? Where's the cry? Where's the I don't see it. I don't see it much on the news. I mean, I hear they say they're gonna do this, but it just kind of it's like you ever sit at home and the TV's watching you?
Well, you know what? There have been massive protests around this country, right? This No King protest, and these are ongoing, right? And these are going to get a lot louder. Now that this bill is passed, probably the effect won't be felt immediately, but within months, people will take notice of what is happening, right? When the Medicaid reimbursement is no longer, those checks no longer coming, and the medical facilities are closing in rural areas where there's only one hospital. We've seen this happen. We grew up in New York. Right? How many hospitals did they close in New York? Right?
None that I know. Well,
just in New York,
the only one that I knew of. But I'm saying that as far as the hospitals being closed,
Cumberland, Baptist, Sydenham, Unity, and the list goes on. They have closed tons of hospitals. In fact, Beth Israel in Manhattan, Lower Manhattan, that just closed.
Isn't that
right?
Jewish
St. Vincent's hospitals closed as well. So a number of hospitals in New York have closed. Right? That's in New York City. Just imagine if you are in someplace like, say, Appalachia, where there's one hospital and it's 50 miles away from you, but that's the only healthcare facility you have. If they're not getting reimbursement, Medicare or Medicaid reimbursement from the government, they can't survive. Those hospitals will close. They're building a new hospital right down the road here. A new Pocono Medical Center, which is Lehigh Valley. They're building one right in Bartonsville. It's under construction as we speak.
Well,
I guess they didn't anticipate.
Right next to what's the other one down there? St. Luke's.
It's right down the road from St. Luke's. So they're building a new Erdl showroom. Directly across from that is going to be the new Pocono Medical Center or the new Lehigh Valley facility. But if these cuts go into effect, and they're going to happen, right? The bill is signed. Will this hospital be able to survive? Right? The money you make in the first couple of weeks and months.
Did you see they cut funding for cancer research? Did you see that?
Yeah.
How do you cut funding? I don't see. This is what I can't understand. With the tax breaks that the money that they're taking out, with the high deficit that they're creating, how can they explain them taking this money and going other places? How do you have an explanation for that sounds good for the American people? Everything that I hear about this bill and what I've read about this bill is there's nothing good in there for the average American person.
Well, you know what? The fact of the matter is, this administration really does not have to explain, right? Simply because Donald Trump still has a pretty good amount of support. I think something like nearly 80 million people voted for him. So yes, a lot of people have defected, but Trump's core base is still very much faithful to him. They don't care what he does. And when you talk about healthcare in this country, years ago, I'm talking probably in the 70s, there was a proposal to provide everyone with universal health care, just like they have in Europe. They wanted to do the same thing here.
Mm-hmm.
And that bill probably would have passed, except for one thing. There were a number of Caucasian people in this country who said, no, if we have universal health care, they, meaning black and brown people, will have it too.
Mm-hmm.
So even though we're cutting off our nose, despite our faith, it doesn't matter. We don't want them to have it. And here we are, all these decades later, we're facing a healthcare crisis in this country, one that could have been avoided.
Crisis in this country. I'm looking at the clock; it's tick-tocking, so we're past that 30 minutes, going into 40. So I want to pick it up next week. It's that dinner time again. All right.
Mm-hmm. All right, brother.
How are we gonna bring this back next week? I know we're on the air talking about it, but people probably want to know. So what are we looking at next week? We're gonna bring back more of the same, or what are we looking at next week?
Well, you know what? There's always, there's never enough subjects that we can discuss about our president and what he's up to, what the administration is up to. We can talk about the protests. We can finish up on what happened in Brooklyn. And, just to say this real quick, I don't know what ICE was thinking. See, this is a lack of understanding, a lack of knowledge of history, because the Haitian people, with no formal military training, beat the hell out of Napoleon and his well-trained, well-equipped soldiers, ran them back to France. Now, if they could do that then, without formal training and with little to no resources, why do you think you're going to go in Brooklyn to a Haitian celebration and just walk in like this is an open air slave market and just grab the one you want and take them away?
About those ICE people, it's funny that they wear the mask. If you look at the uniforms, they're not really in uniform. Some have one type of uniform, another one has another. There's no uniformity there, right? And they don't carry badges. I think that those ICE people, I think if not all of them, a good majority of them are those people, those 1,500 people that Trump paroled. I just feel that a good majority of them are right there in ICE, working for ICE. Because there was one guy, now he's a part of the DOJ. I can't forget the guys, but he was down with the insurrection, and
right.
now he's like one of the leaders in the DOJ.
After
he got pardoned, what do we come? We're just a criminal society, man, run by criminals, for real.
Well, you know what? They can definitely bring a RICO statute against Trump and his cabinet, because this is an ongoing criminal enterprise, right?
Sure.
And that's something that we could definitely talk about next week. Just the crimes that have been committed since January alone.
I think when we first started out last year, I think that's one of the things that we said. We called it Trump and the crime family.
Mm-hmm.
We were trying to pick a name for him. Well, it seems to fit. It fit him well. Trump and the crime family, because they're all criminals, all of them.
Well, he's Don Trumpione is what he is, right?
Okay,
and
Don Trumpione, all right.
Don Trumpione, and it's clear what he's doing, right? But we can pick that up next week.
All right, brother. Again, thank you very much. I hope this weekend you have a good weekend, man. You got any plans for this weekend?
I don't, brother. I guess I'll just be gathering content for next week.
All right. Well, it's my anniversary, so on Saturday, we're going to hit the road, Jack.
Well, happy anniversary, brother.
Well, all right, brother. Thanks a lot, man.
All right. Have a good night.
Yeah,
all right. Peace.